Hi, Victor. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Marjo? Nice to see you again.
Good, thank you. Nice to see you again. So today we will talk about kefir. You are like the kefir specialist. You're passionate
Mm,
about kefir. You have a course about kefir. So I will take the opportunity and ask you some questions about it for our audience. So first, can you please introduce yourself?
yeah, my name is Victor Cozzetto, and I usually under my title it says a wise traditions nutritionist because I studied at Hawthorne University for actually wise traditions nutrition, which I did recently. But I'm also a computer scientist with a double minor in psychology and sociology. I study a lot of different things in health. I'm just kind of a science geek, so I love physics, biology, chemistry, etc. And I have my Vitagenics group on Facebook, and I've been coaching and helping people online, one to one or in groups for many years, regardless of whatever their ailment is. And so I have classes and all kinds of things like that. So I guess that's about it. That about sums it up. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm
perfect.
passionate about kefir. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I just have a few quick questions for you about kefir. So it's like more like an introduction about kefir, and then if people have more
Mhm.
questions, then they can ask under this video, or they can go to your group or my group because I have my own Facebook group also. Okay, so my first question to you is, what is kefir?
Mm, okay, so for I guess the easiest way to think of it, it's like a kind of like a yogurt drink. Looks like yogurt, kind of tastes like yogurt, but the difference is that kefir has like is well, it's exponentially more powerful because it has a lot more diversity when we talk about bacteria and yeast. Of course, yogurt varies a lot too. There's all different kinds of yogurt, but it tends to be very limited diversity with yogurt. So you can think of it as just like a super powered yogurt.
Yeah, and also the
Um,
main difference is that you make kefir with those kefir grains,
right.
right?
So it uses a this reusable culture, or you can use the word SCOBY. So people familiar with kombucha know that there's a SCOBY, and that's kind of the perfect word because it represents exactly what it is. It's a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast.
Hmm.
But the kefir culture, or we call them grains. I don't know why they call them grains. It looks very different from a kombucha SCOBY. So it's looks like rubber cauliflower.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you just keep putting that into your milk and keeps making more kefir.
Yeah, so like these kefir grains are like yeast and bacteria living together and
Right,
feeding off sugar. And in like for milk kefir, they feed off the lactose sugar
right,
in the milk, right?
right, exactly. So, for example, after the final product, you have probably no lactose or maybe 1% of the lactose. And it depends on your process. You learn how to get that out.
Hmm.
It also, the kefir is actually eating everything in the milk because it has all your macro enzymes, meaning it actually breaks down the protein, breaks down the fat, and it just completely consumes the sugar. So,
Hmm.
but it's really consuming like all parts of it. So it's a very complex, very dynamic relationship between all those microbes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So why would you want to drink kefir?
Mm, uh, wow. Yeah. So well, of course, I do end up talking for hours about that. But it's one of the single most nutritious things that you can consume. So probably everybody knows, oh, it's probiotic. So yeah, I I guess for most people that's the number one reason. It's the most powerful, most potent probiotic. Like a spoonful of kefir has more probiotics than a whole bottle of supplements. And then, of course, there's the diversity, and we know that they're synergistic because they survive and live and thrive together, right? But really the nutrition is just amazing because if we look at milk, right, and hopefully you're making your kefir with raw milk. Raw milk is one of the most nutritious things available, and then kefir amplifies that. You get you get unique peptides in kefir, like hundreds of unique peptides that you don't even find in raw milk. And you get all the amino acids, and the minerals and vitamins, etc. So there's a lot of reasons to drink kefir.
Yeah, so lots of probiotics, and also
Mm.
the kefir grains make the milk easier to digest
Yes.
by breaking
Mm,
the protein, as you said, the fats,
right,
the sugar.
right. So it can
Okay.
also, for people that are lactose intolerant
Hmm.
or even think they are dairy intolerant, once they consume kefir, and if that's a daily part of their diet, they often notice they can consume other dairy.
Right. Yes, this is something very interesting about kefir is
Mm,
that it's so powerful with probiotics that when you have lactose intolerance or dairy intolerance in general, it is because your gut is really damaged and you
mm,
don't have the right microbiome. So you are dairy intolerant, but you might actually tolerate kefir,
mm,
especially if you start slow, because kefir will rebuild little by little your gut flora, and you will be able to digest it. And also because, as we said,
mm,
the kefir grains pre-digest everything in the milk, so it's just easier to digest.
mm,
um, yeah, I just want to tell about my own experience with kefir here. So I was severely intolerant to dairy. Like one drop of butter or of milk would
mm,
make me really, really sick. And so in my protocol that I show on my channel, so it's a protocol that healed me from my food intolerances,
mm.
including dairy, and I was also intolerant to gluten and eggs and
Yeah. Wow.
oats also. But so regarding dairy, I was very, very intolerant to dairy, and so I did my protocol without any dairy. And for probiotics, I just use probiotics pills. But even after my protocol, so I was better with dairy. After my protocol, I could tolerate more dairy, but it was still not perfect. I could eat
Mm,
some dairy, but I could not like drink liters of milk. I would have symptoms if I overdid dairy with dairy.
mm,
So what really ended my healing, like the last piece of the puzzle for me was actually kefir. uh, at least I think that's what it was, because so I after my protocol I started to drink kefir, but just little by little, because kefir was still giving me some issues if I was drinking too much of it. So I started with like a very small dosage of one sip per week, and I
wow.
slowly built it up, and until I became totally fine with dairy, to my surprise, to my big surprise, because I really thought that I would never be able to completely heal my dairy
Mm,
intolerance. But so yeah, kefir was, I think, the last piece of the puzzle that really achieved the healing of my gut. So
mm,
I think it's very powerful, but you have to know how to use it, because as we
yeah.
said, if you are severely intolerant to dairy, or if you have also histamine intolerance, like I had those two intolerances. It was very tricky
Mm,
for me to reintroduce dairy and fermented dairy, but little by
mm.
little it works, and we have seen that with other people also.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah,
Yes. So many clients. And I think, yeah, like everybody's journey is unique, right? So as you're saying, it's really important to start out slow and find out what an individual can tolerate.
right.
Like, it's funny because the general recommendation is like, yeah, you start slow, with like a half a glass a day. But when you have people that have severe dysbiosis, that can destroy them,
That can be
right?
too much.
Right, you
Yep.
get really severe Herxheimer reaction or die off because it is incredibly potent. So yeah, so some people, right, they need to find their path, right, and start off little. Some people can jump right in,
Hmm.
but we've also seen many funny stories about how some people did just try to leap right in, and then they believe that they can't tolerate kefir, but it's just because they went too fast.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky when you're really ill, when you have severe issues.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And that's why also we have people, asking for guidance, and that's what we do because,
Right,
yeah, in theory, there are many very interesting tools that we can use to heal the gut, but
yes,
you need to know how to use these tools and,
right,
yeah, to know your body also and to adapt those tools to your own body, to your own condition. So, yeah, it's
right,
important.
right.
So how do you prepare kefir?
Yeah, so you just take some milk, hopefully raw milk, right? You want to get the absolute best quality milk you can. If you can't get raw, get it, possibly you can find that's non-homogenized
Right.
or pasteurized at the lowest temperature possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be any mammal milk. So it doesn't have to be cow. Goat milk is actually a bit easier because it's naturally homogeneous,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't get the cream top. So really, any mammalian milk is fine. And then you get those grains that we talked about, which is the SCOBY or the culture, and you can get them from many sources. You can find them online. Traditionally, people always get them from other people,
Yeah.
um, because it is when you order it online somewhere, you kind of have to wake them up and revive them, which is a minor hassle, but it's still the same process. You take those grains, you put them in milk. Like 24 hours later, the milk is fermented. And then you would take the grains out using a strainer and then just put the grains immediately into new milk, and just so you keep repeating the process. And of course, I like to double ferment my kefir, meaning
Mm-hmm.
I then take the kefir and I blend in a banana or maybe banana mango or infinite varieties, and then
Oh,
let that ferment for a while.
yeah. And why do you like to double ferment it?
So when we double ferment, we actually change the balance of the microbes. For example, even when we analyze the balance of microbes in the culture, it is very different from the balance of microbes in the kefir drink. So that it really changes a lot. So it's even good to eat the grains for that reason too,
Mm-hmm.
because your grains are always growing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll take my extra grains and I'll put them in with my double ferment. I'll blend them in. And now when you ferment fruit, again, you get a change in the balance, and you're breaking down. So you're fermenting the fruit. So you get a lot of additional B vitamins, vitamin C. Like for example, I like to blend in things like banana, mango, and I like to add like a orange peel or a lemon peel, and the kefir is going to pull the vitamins out of the white part on the inside of the skin. So you really extract a lot more nutrition. So
Mm-hmm.
you get many more nutrients that way. And of course, the fruit itself is very good for us, and you're you're getting all that fruit with less of the fruit sugar, because again, the kefir is eating the sugar in the fruit, because
Mm-hmm.
then it starts to ferment that. And so you've got now a combination of this food source. You've got more prebiotics, right? So you've got a little bit more diversity of prebiotics that you're mixing in. You can add so many things. Like recently, I've been adding maca root to try to get it, because it has a slightly malt flavor. Cacao, which I know we shouldn't really recommend to people because of the caffeine content. But again, you're fermenting the cacao, so
Mm-hmm.
you're also removing some of the negative attributes of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you all these different things. You're adding all these more substrates for your biome to grow on.
And also, I feel, let me know if I'm wrong, but I feel when I double ferment my kefir, it gets more fizzy, more bubbles, more gas, we can say. And I think it's because the double fermentation really makes the numbers of yeasts grow, like the double fermentation is more about, like, there's more yeast than in the first fermentation.
Well, you can control that though. If you deny oxygen, you'll get less yeast.
Okay,
It's a
but
very,
the
it's,
fizzy effect we have, it's because of multiplication of yeast, maybe over other types of microbes in the kefir.
it's a little bit more complex. So, well, the fizziness will come from the trapping of the carbon dioxide that's being released in processes.
Hmm.
And you've got, so for example, the yeast, if the yeast has oxygen, it's producing more alcohol.
Yeah.
So you might also be feeling a little more alcohol. And
Hmm.
then depending on like how much you agitate your kefir and such, um, you could have more or less alcohol too, because the bacteria is going to convert, it's going to eat the alcohol if
Hmm.
it has oxygen.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of tricky things depending on how we decide to cover the kefir. So kefir actually doesn't need any oxygen at all, but generally speaking, we do let it breathe,
Hmm.
right? And so we let it breathe. And if you use like a fermenting cap to only release pressure, but you don't let oxygen in, then it's not breathing at all, and you'll get a different product. And if you put a tight cap, you hold pressure, and you can get more fizziness because the air
Hmm.
cannot escape.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's a little bit complicated and a little bit tricky. Yeah, so
Hmm.
you can kind of control that yeast growth
Okay.
with agitation and air exposure, pressure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. And so I think you prefer milk kefir over water kefir, right?
Yes, I do.
So what is the difference, and why do you prefer milk kefir?
Because I guess the milk, because milk itself is phenomenal. Now, we know supermarket milk is toxic,
Hmm.
right? But again, if we're talking about raw milk, it is such a phenomenal source of nutrition. So that alone gives it an enormous advantage over water kefir, because water kefir is using like water and sugar or fruit
Hmm.
juices and such. So just because of the milk, there's no way for the water kefir to compete as far
Hmm.
as the amount of nutrition.
Hmm.
And then you can actually make water kefir grains from milk kefir grains.
Hmm.
It's a little bit difficult the process, but you can do it, and you're reducing the diversity of the microbes. So water kefir is still amazing. Actually, I think it's much better than kombucha.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's because it's more hardy, less prone to contamination.
Hmm.
Kombucha is a little bit risky because it can be contaminated. It can have undesirables without you knowing it, and that's not likely to happen with water kefir or milk kefir.
Okay.
So the difference there is again much more diversity in the milk kefir and much more nutrition. And when we have that stronger base of milk and we have more diversity, you end up with again many more peptides, more amino acids, more vitamins and minerals, just more of
Hmm.
everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
but
very
water kefir is
nourishing.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's not that I want to discredit water kefir. I think it's
Hmm.
fantastic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but for people who have candida overgrowth, there's the concern that there is sugar, maybe more
Mm.
sugar in water kefir than in milk kefir.
Yes.
So for people who are sensitive to carbs, to sugar,
Yeah.
maybe then water kefir is not a good idea at that moment in their healing
Mhm.
process. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree completely. That's actually another one of the risks with both kombucha and water kefir. It's very difficult to manage that sugar content. It's kind of a guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas milk kefir, it's really much easier to know what's going on. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can really tell, and you can be
Mm-hmm.
assured. And like I explain in my videos, I go through where you ferment. double ferment, and then you can even do aging, which means you just let it sit in the fridge for 2 or 3 days. So the fermentation process is almost stopped, but actually it's not. And
Mhm.
then that's going to make sure there's like no lactose left. But we
Mhm.
can't really do the same thing with the water kefir and
Mhm.
kombucha.
Mhm.
There's always it seems that there's always quite a bit of sugar left in those products. And then when you go too far and over ferment, they're more fragile, right? So
Mhm.
milk kefir is really hard to kill, very
Mhm.
hard to starve to death. And
Mhm.
again, it's because of that incredible diversity and how they play off of each other.
Okay. Okay, great. So that's all for my questions today. Thank you very much, Victor. And
My
if
pleasure.
if
Thank you.
people have more questions about kefir, again, they can ask under this video, or they can join us in our groups. So uh,
Yeah.
we are on the Vitagenic Facebook group, so people can just look it up on Facebook,
Mm.
Vitagenics. And also I have my new Facebook group that I just created a few days ago that is called the Candida Slayer Forum. Yeah, and they can also find you on your channel, on your YouTube channel. I will
Yes.
put the
Right.
link under the video. And also, so you have your own um,
A
website
school kind of
also,
website. Yeah.
and a
Right.
school.
Right.
So I will put
Right.
the links under the video. So
Sounds great.
you sell a course about nutrition and many other things, how to get a perfect health. And yeah, I have also a website that is called the candidaslayer.com. Okay, thank you
Hmm.
very much, Victor. And
Yeah.
we
Thank
will
you.
make more videos about other subjects. We have so much things to talk about.
Many, many things. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Marjo. I appreciate it.
thank you, Victor.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye
Happy
bye.
healing, everybody.